Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this webinar, The Future of IoT Connectivity Management Platforms in an Era of Transition. I'm Matt Hatton, one of the founding partners at Transforma Insights, and I am joined by Nir Shlom, who is the CEO of floLIVE. Hello, Nir.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you much for inviting me.
My pleasure. The connectivity management platform space is a fascinating one at the moment. All sorts of moving parts and transition, as we term it. We talk about a lot of IoT transition topics at the moment, and connectivity management platforms is certainly one that's going through a period of transition. And we'll be exploring all about that during the course of the webinar. The format for the session is we'll have about 40-45 minutes of presentation from myself and Nir. We will be exchanging views on various different aspects of what's going on in the CMP space, and at the end we'll hand it over to Q&A. So if you've got a question, please drop it into the question box, and we will get to them at the end of the session. There have already been a few questions that have been posed by people as they registered, so we'll add that into the pot as well. So without any further ado, let me talk you through the agenda for today's session. I'm going to share a little bit about who we are very quickly. I'll hand over to Nir. He'll talk a little bit about floLIVE and who they are and what they do. We'll talk about some key IoT trends affecting connectivity management platforms. We'll then talk about what is a connectivity management platform. Maybe we wanted to address that one first up, but actually we'll talk about trends in the industry first, and then we'll talk about how we define CMP and the functions that are in there. We'll then talk a little bit about the CMP market segmentation that we've done, identifying, you may have seen some reference to it, thin CMPs versus thick CMPs and the various functions that sit within that. We'll then talk about some conclusions and recommendations about what the various players ought to do about CMPs. And then I'll hand over again to Nir to talk about the floLIVE approach, but we'll be taking this as a two-hander, sort of spreading the discussion between the two of us. First up, a little bit about Transforma Insights very quickly. We're a research and consulting firm focused on the Internet of Things. IoT is probably 80-90% of what we look at, and we do deep dive market forecasts. We write reports about technical and commercial best practice across all sorts of things relating to new technologies and so on. Now, we're a little different, we think, from other analyst firms, and one way in which we're different is we're able to focus specifically on this IoT space. We're very immersed in the space, and we have deeper and probably more conversations about all of these granular elements of IoT than most do, which allows us, not because we've necessarily got the biggest brains, we certainly don't have that, but we're able to talk to everybody, understand what's happening in the space, and that allows us to identify these key themes, key trends, understanding what's happening in the market. There's a bunch of our content that's available for free. You can check out our news page, our blog page. We've got some hot topics that look at all sorts of things relating to IoT, one of which is around IoT platforms. So take a look at that. Also, a replay of this video of the webinar will be available to anybody who signs up for the free essential package. So that's Transforma Insights in a couple of minutes. Now to hand over to Nir just to talk quickly about who floLIVE is.
Thank you very much, Matt. floLIVE, we are a company that produces solutions for IoT connectivity and IoT networking on a global scale. 130 employees globally. Our main offices are in the US, in Dallas, Texas, in the UK, in China, and development centers in Israel and in Sofia, Bulgaria. As I mentioned before, providing global connectivity solutions and services. And basically, one of the things that we are going to talk about later on is the advantage we can deliver to our customers by owning the entire technology stack. You can see some of the investors of floLIVE here on the slide. And if you can go to the next slide, please. If you look on which technology components we produce in-house for the benefit of our customers, is first of all a holistic mobile core, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, narrowband IoT, CAT mobile core, which is a cloud native core. We have our own holistic charging and rating capabilities as part of the CMP. We provide remote SIM provisioning and SIM management capabilities for the side of the device, and of course the holistic connectivity solution that comes as a wrapper of the entire solution. We truly believe in in using the cutting edge technologies and putting everything in the cloud, which reduces the unit cost for our customers, and we'll refer that to later as well. If you go to the next slide, please. And then if you look on what we are building and offering our customers, you can basically look at it in two big buckets. The first one is the connectivity management solution itself. It's basically the software that includes all the components we spoke about before, the core network, the billing or the rating, charging engine, the remote SIM provisioning, and the connectivity management platform features capabilities. This is kind of a vertically integrated, holistic platform that is, in a way, competing with some of the names that are known in the market. So this is the first thing that we are offering our MNOs and big enterprises customers. And the second thing, which is not less important, is the global network that comes with it. So we've built our own global network in different parts of the world with the local cores, local packet gateways, and all these networks are interconnected to one another. And some of them are already integrated with other MNOs. And by doing it, we are providing a global network that allows our MNO partners to use that for better performance, faster termination in local geographies, and also using our global IMSI library for their own needs. So just to summarize that, it's a holistically, vertically integrated connectivity management platform, plus the global network that comes with it. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Nir. Fantastic stuff. So I should explain a little bit about the background on running this particular webinar. We published a report a couple of weeks ago, what we term an IoT transition topic paper, which looks at the key changes that have been happening in the market in recent years for connectivity management platforms. It also looks at the functionality that's required, identifies the roles and capabilities of the different players in the CMP landscape, including what I mentioned earlier, specifying the functionality delivered by what we term thin and thick CMPs. And we provide also some recommendations to mobile network operators and MVNOs about their strategy relating to CMPs. So there is a report available. If you want to check out our website, you should find a press release there, and you can download that report if that's of interest. But first off, I want to hand over to you, Nir, just to kick things off and talk a little bit about global OEM needs and how you see that playing out.
Very well, thank you, Matt. First of all, the reason we are talking about OEMs is because I think that when we look on the market, either as MNOs or MVNOs or connectivity providers, the main type of customers we are targeting are the global OEMs. These are the companies that are operating devices in different types and shapes, and these are primarily the customers of the connectivity management platform that we build and the global solution that we build. And when we speak with these customers, we come down to a few buckets of needs that we must take into consideration when we design and shape the solution. The first one is obviously coverage. It becomes more and more critical, specifically for the global OEMs, to have the right coverage to their needs. Specifically when we talk about, for example, low power wide area coverage on a global scale, which is becoming a problem in the market or a need in the market and is not properly addressed. This is just one example, but we can talk about coverage in other aspects as well. The restrictions about coverage with permanent roaming is also consideration that comes into the conversation of coverage, meaning we need to be able to address the coverage needs in a proper way. The second one is the performance things. So in the past, we saw a little bit less conversations about performance. And performance basically means how do we ensure the same level of consistent behavior of devices that are connected to different networks around the world, whether using roaming or local connection or other types of connections. And customers are asking more and more, we need to have a certain level of guarantee about the performance of the devices wherever they are connected. So if you are Mr. MNO, you provide me a solution using your roaming agreements globally. How do you make sure that in every location I will get the same level of latency, for example, or other performance means? Security is always something that big customers are looking at, and we need to look at it as well. We see customers that have been working with some specific global MNOs coming and asking, if we're deploying 1 million devices with you, Mr. MNO or Mr. MVNO, and now down the stream, we want to move some of these devices elsewhere. How can we do that? And obviously, the solutions around eSIM are part of the answer, but not the only one. But we need to be aware of their need to be a little bit more flexible and in a way, get control of the future destiny. And the last one is we get more and more questions about what is basically the role of private networks as part of these global solutions that are being offered now in the market. Are these two completely separate solutions when I'm connecting my devices to the public network versus the private network? Or can we think about a combination of these two into one global consistent solution there? So that's the first one. If you go to the next slide, we can talk about some of the specific things that we are seeing there as examples. So for example, companies that are dealing with telematics are looking for or saying that one single IMSI is not enough for global coverage. And permanent roaming, specifically in countries like Turkey, Brazil, China, are a problem for them. Peekaboo devices are these devices that wake up once or twice a day for a short time period, sometimes, few minutes, a couple of minutes, and we need to be able to get the service they need within that short period of time. For example, send information, receive the information, get the registrations to the network in a proper way. We spoke about the latencies around the world as an example, and we see customers that are saying, we know that a single MNO in the US would be best in class in latency in the US, but their coverage in Europe will be with 250 milliseconds delay, and this is too much for us. Can we get a solution that can assure 100 millisecond global latency on average and no more than that? And this is becoming more challenging for the MNOs to address. We're seeing medical devices that are looking to have all the data within the same country, but for different countries. So I'm selling medical devices in a few countries, and in each country, I need to make sure that all the information does not go beyond the country boundaries for regulatory purposes, et cetera, et cetera. So we are seeing more advanced use cases that are not necessarily being addressed by some of the legacy solutions in the market, and we need to be able to get to address them down the stream. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Nir. I mentioned the word transition a few times. So we identified within Transforma Insights and specifically within IoT, a bunch of transition topics, transition themes, things where there's a lot of change happening right now in terms of how the market sits. So, for instance, we might have known how the market operated, and it was in a fairly steady state about 3 to 5 years ago. And 3 to 5 years from now, we might expect that the market actually looks rather more mature and has settled down a bit. But today, there's quite a lot of disruption, and connectivity management platforms is one of those. So CMP being one of the key underlying pieces of middleware used by network operators and MVNOs, and even some enterprises who want to act as their own operator. And they manage connections, handle activation, deactivation, billing, analytics, reporting, various other functions. And we see this part of IoT is going through quite a period of transition. So there's changing economics, which will have an impact on how you might, as an operator, want to provision your connections and support those connections. The scope of the functionality that's included has expanded dramatically in the last few years. And we're also seeing a lot of network operators being much more proactive about reviewing their CMP strategy. So go back 3 to 5 years, it was a market that was dominated by just a handful of large players. We're seeing these disruptive forces happening now, the ones that I just mentioned a moment ago. And 3 to 5 years from now, we would expect to see a more diverse set of strategies, a more diverse set of CMPs possibly in the market. So very interesting. And this is the reason why we're addressing this topic and looking at this one. Now, before I go on to share any more, we want to get you to do a little bit of work. We want you to tell us which of the following best describes your interest in CMPs. There'll be a little pop-up box to click on your choice, just showing in a moment. But the options are: my organization uses a CMP, but we're actively considering alternatives. Second option: use a CMP, but we may be open to alternatives. Third one: use a CMP, but no plans to use alternatives. The fourth one: do not use a CMP and are looking for one. And the fifth one: don't use a CMP and don't have any active need for one, as in you're just here to check out what's interesting or what's happening in the IoT space. So let's get that voting going. The responses should start popping up any minute now. Let's see how responsive you are. Here we go. Okay, so early lead from, I'm guessing, just a few responses. Use a CMP, no plan to use alternatives. Okay, but there's a few changes. The responses are updating as we go. All right, we're reaching something like a steady state on that. Any more? Just a few more. Okay, Nir, quite a spread in there, as I think we'd probably expect, wouldn't we? A wide variety of people who are interested in this space, quite a few who are actively considering alternatives. In fact, it's pretty much evenly spread between all 5 of the categories. So 18% actively considering alternatives, 19% open to others, a little bit over a quarter say no, not planning to use alternatives, but obviously interested in what's going on. And then the rest don't actually use a CMP, but they're kind of interested in what's going on in space. Any thoughts on this, Nir? Anything that jumps out that surprises you?
No, not surprising. Of course, it would be very interesting to understand for those who are looking for alternatives, what are the main reasons for that. But I think we know the answers.
Well, I'll come on to talk about that. I'm sure it's a neat little segue into what I'm going to talk about next. So let's get on to that. Right. So one of the big sections of the report that we just published was looking at some of these key trends. It's really key trends in IoT that will have an impact on CMP. So one is around challenging economics. We've talked for a while about this concept of $1 IoT, and $1 IoT being a large chunk of the connection base that's only generating a revenue of $1 per year. Now, this isn't spread across the entirety of the base, but certainly it's becoming quite a significant part of the base, and will be exacerbated by the use of some of the LPWA technology, so NB-IoT and LTE-M. That's likely to drive down that average spend per connection. At the same time, we're not really seeing any decrease in the demands from the operators for the functionality related to CMPs. And in fact, if anything, they've become a little bit more demanding. So the question for the operators relating to CMPs is, how can we continue to support connections, and indeed how can the CMPs continue to support their customers at declining revenue per connection, sometimes as low as 20 cents a year, and at the same time support those complex requirements, and all against the background of being essentially, what should we say, loss-making, challenging financials for some players. So as an example, you think about the big players, Cisco and Ericsson. Well, Cisco's opted for a dual approach. It's raised its prices to make Control Center a profitable business, and at the same time has introduced a set of additional value-added features and some tiering, a couple of topics we'll come back to talk about in a little while. Ericsson, in contrast, has opted to instead exit the market altogether, transferring its IoT accelerator business over to Aries Communications. You probably won't have missed that particular piece of news recently. So challenging economics having an impact on the CMP space. Falling barriers to entry. so it's become more financially viable to build a CMP and deliver a rich set of features based on being cloud native, essentially. There are now dozens of CMPs, many of which are just skins of other vendors' platforms, often with only limited differentiation, and many are only used by a single connectivity provider as their in-house CMP, but nevertheless there are an increasing number of CMPs in the space. And the market for CMPs, so the options for licensing by a connectivity provider, have grown significantly in the last few years. In some cases, as a result of operators deciding they have an in-house CMP that's sufficiently feature-rich that it can compete with those incumbent players. In others, it's a result of new entrants. floLIVE, perfect example of one of the new entrants. The third aspect, frustration with existing vendors. I mentioned the two incumbent players, Cisco Control Center, Ericsson IoT Accelerator. Most major mobile network operators used one of the two of them. There are a couple of other options. Some players develop their own, Vodafone with GDSP, Verizon with ThingSpace, and there have been a few other CMPs, from Aris Communications, from Comarch, from ZTE, and so on. And some of the bigger MVNOs tended to build their own. But it's been notable that the MNOs have become increasingly frustrated, whether fairly or unfairly, but certainly increasingly frustrated with the platforms that they've been using. Every year we do a study of the capabilities and strategies of network operators and MVNOs. Our latest CSP benchmarking was published back in February. And one of the questions we ask, or a set of the questions we ask, is obviously around CMPs. It's an underlying standard piece of functionality. And there certainly was some frustration with the vendors that they're using. Some to do with price rises, some to do with roadmap. We think perhaps a little bit unfairly, but nevertheless, it has bubbled up to the surface as being a frustration. These are quite demanding customers, though, significant requirements for customization and so forth. Next point, in fact, I mentioned this already, Ericsson and Aris, big news. So the IoT MVNO Aris acquired the IoT capabilities of Ericsson in the form of IoT Accelerator and Connected Vehicle Cloud. Now, it seems like it's planning on operating as a CMP, but with an MVNO-like role of directly addressing enterprises, particularly automotive OEMs, we expect. Now, the operators will react in different ways to this. Some will see it as being an opportunity to bring connected car connections to their network. Others will see it as more of a direct threat, but there's certainly some uncertainty there. So you combine this uncertainty over Aris and Ericsson with some bubbling dissatisfaction with Cisco over the perceived price increases and a general, perhaps slightly unfair view that the product roadmap of both has been quite slow to evolve. And we see quite a significant set of MNOs considering their options for migrating away from those established players. Now, this might take the form of literally shifting millions of connections to other platforms, or it might take the form of using introducing another platform to support a certain set of connections or new connections, or a variety of different approaches going on there. New differentiation mechanisms, I will talk about these in rather more detail, but the bottom line here is that there is a basic set of SIM management functions like activate, deactivate, suspend, billing, all of that baseline functionality that every CMP effectively has. So the CMPs are looking at differentiating based on other capabilities. Cisco, for instance, talks about IoT as a service rather than connectivity management platform, reflecting that it's got a rather wider portfolio. And we agree with this, well, the sentiment that actually there's a set of other functionality that sits immediately around CMP, and it's not just around those baseline pieces of functionality. It goes way beyond those. And we introduced this idea of thick versus thin, but I'll come back and talk about that in a little bit. Next thing is market bifurcation. So that I mentioned in that the concept of $1 IoT that we're likely to have a lot of devices that are actually generating very low output, but at the same time, average revenue per connection. They're not users, but average revenue per connection. And at the same time, you'll still have connected cars and very high bandwidth services that will be generating, I don't know, $5–10 per month in terms of revenue. And actually, we see this as a bifurcation. You've got this sort of low-cost sensor end of the spectrum for a large number of applications and probably the bulk of connections, but the bulk of value is probably going to be driven by these higher data rate type connections. But the way that you address those connections is likely to be very different, both in terms of the platforms being used and in terms of the go-to-market, in terms of tariffing, in terms of all sorts of things, and this has an implication, we think, also for the CMP landscape. Before I move on to that, Nir, I don't know whether you had any thoughts, comments on that, or whether you want to save that for in a couple of slides' time when you'll be talking about similar sorts of things. But do you have any immediate thoughts on this?
No, I agree with all the points. The last one is a very good one. We will refer to it later on as well, but I completely agree with these trends.
Okay, good stuff. And I will give you opportunity to talk through in very specific detail. But let me dig in now. Okay, that was some of the key themes. I also want to talk about, okay, what do we mean by CMP? What are the capabilities that are involved there? Well, some of them are common to every CMP. SIM management, that first one that I mentioned in this slide here. Baseline functionality, activation, deactivation, APIs, some billing functions, and so on. The second one's around advanced analytics. Now, a lot of CMPs have some form of analytics, but that's a very variable set of capabilities. So you can see the addition of functionality involving more complex analytics, automation, things like anomaly detection, things around security, root cause analysis, churn reduction analysis, bill prediction, a whole lot more. And potentially in future making use of AI to be more fully optimized and real time. Abstraction. So this is about aggregating connectivity data from multiple CMPs to provide a single pane of glass. Some platforms provide that functionality, and in fact, there's a set of specific companies that do that. Core network functions. Now, this is an interesting one, and this is what really sets certain players apart from others. It's the operating your own core network functions upon which those client connections are hosted to give greater control over connectivity functionality, greater transparency, more real-time capabilities, higher levels of security. Some CMPs have that, many don't. eSIM and subscription management, this is probably the other major area. So this is the management of the process either via a platform's own subscription management capability or more typically from a specialist third party. And this includes, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, the evolution from SGP2, the M2M variant, to the SGP 3132 variant. There was somebody posed a question for us in the pre-event question options to address that, and we'll talk about that one at the end, I think, in more detail if we don't get to it during the session here. But that functionality is now certainly very closely adjacent to the CMP functionality. Global connectivity orchestration. This is a support role to operator partners where the CMP provides enterprises with an opportunity to access connectivity packages from other operators. So the contracting commercial terms usually continues to be with the individual operators, but the CMP acts as a sort of clearinghouse, middleman kind of a role. And then the seventh one, managed connectivity. So this is the next step. This is the thing that's typically the role of the MNO or MVNO, but some companies, the CMPs, also provide actual connectivity in the form of contracting for data plans and the associated management. So this is really about being an MVNO too, and the big question is whether CMPs can bridge that gap to be a connectivity provider as well. We'll talk about that in a little while too. And there's a whole stack of other functions. Things like Some other technical capabilities. Cloud connectors is a very interesting one. How do you integrate data into the appropriate cloud function? A differentiated UI, providing a user interface that's appropriate for the network operators, the resellers, or the customers, or whoever else, and a stack of others. And there's also, we shouldn't forget the commercial elements, and actually this is critical. Low TCO. You want, given the issues we've got with unit economics, it's a huge consideration. You need to have the economics make sense for both parties in addressing customers or connections that might be generating $1 a year or less. Fast type to market. You don't want to miss an opportunity, so you want to be able to get out there in the market as quick as you can. Agility, strict SLAs. You want a CMP that understands the technical challenges of optimizing IoT. For instance, cross-optimizing the various elements to make sure that the connectivity works appropriately with the protocols and so on. And there's a few other compliance. We think there's an increasing role for the CMP in terms of understanding the regulatory environments in which devices are going to be deployed, and therefore being able to support on compliance. And you even extend to things like integration services, maybe not a standard add-on, but some providers of CMPs also operate as ICT consultancies working on how the thing gets deployed. So at that point, I'm going to hand over. Nir, you've got, I know, some very specific views on, well, most of these certainly. So I'm going to hand over to you to talk through those.
Thank you very much, Matt. Very interesting views there. Let me just try and take another perspective of these 7 core capabilities of CMPs that you just presented. And I would say that the underlying thing that we are trying to achieve here is to build a solution with the mobile network operators, with the MVNOs, that will be addressing as many needs of customers as possible, and we'll do it in a profitable way for the MNOs. Because you mentioned before, Matt, that one of the challenges of the MNOs is the fact that IoT was not always profitable for them to go and operate. And I came from a big MNO myself, and we've seen this Aries Ericsson transaction, which also has some roots in whether what was offered before was profitable enough for Ericsson or not. So this is definitely a question we need to address, how to make all these things profitable. And to take a better view of that, I would like, with your permission, to divide the 7 core capabilities into 2 groups. Group number 1 is highlighted in this slide over here. And this is, in a way, let's call it the core platform capabilities when we look on a holistic platform. And I take your end-to-end variety of needs, and I group them together and say, okay, a modern connectivity management platform must include all these 4 things to start with. Number 1, the very basic functionalities, no question about that. The SIM management, the activate, deactivate, etc. The analytics definitely should be there, because when you manage 5 million devices, 10 million devices, 100 million devices, you need to have automated tools and capabilities within the platform to be able to identify trends and solve things that may come in the future. And the use of AI for that must be and will be part of the solution that we will provide, and I believe some other players in the market will provide. The next one is the core network functions. I don't think we can overrate the importance of controlling the core network for IoT. First of all, having a dedicated core for the IoT versus the consumer's business. This is number 1, because we see more and more where it required its own, in a way, behaviors and handling, separated from the consumer's core. So we believe that an end-to-end connectivity management platform must include a core network as well. But it's not enough just to have the core network. The core network needs to be part of the holistic solution. And in order to be able to use the advantages of owning a core network within the CMP, we need basically to have it fully integrated with the rest of the components, meaning the ability to control the core capabilities by the enterprises in an easy way. The steering, the other capabilities, this is number 1. The ability to retrieve information in real time and behave based on that and act based on that We spoke about analytics. A lot of information is coming from the core. If you own your core, if the core is for the IoT in a dedicated way, and sometimes even for specific use cases, and you can retrieve the information from the core in real time, you can really tune the CMP behavior to the specific needs of your customers. More than that, if you own the core, you can also solve some of the latency performance issues we spoke about before, because you can potentially deploy more than one core or more than one packet gateways, UPS, whatever you call them, globally to make your experience more consistent. So this is all part of owning the core capability there. And the last one is, of course, the eSIM subscription management. And I'll say something that I believe we all agree on. The eSIM management is going to be more and more part of the connectivity management platform. We're not going to see in the future two different sets of solutions. One is eSIM management and second is connectivity management. And here we go. It is going to be fully integrated. And the expectation should be that connectivity management platform should include as a major feature the ability to also use eSIM in different variations and capabilities over there. So these are the four things that I'm taking from Matt's classification as being the core platform capabilities that must be there for the connectivity management platform. But I think that it's not enough. And this is exactly why when we go to the next slide, we look on the other things coming in. We see the realization in the market that when customers are approaching the MNOs and are asking for connectivity solutions beyond the MNO's native footprint, whatever it is, and as wide as it can be, whether limited to one country only or to 17, 18, 25 properties for the big MNOs, when we go beyond that native footprint, where we have the radio access owned by the MNO, we need to address these three elements that are not always part of the very basic functionality that we expect to have within a connectivity management platform. First of all, the ability to, in a way, get connections and capabilities from other MNOs that can be part of the solution that we are offering. So, for example, we are a big MNO and we're offering a global solution for a car maker, and they need local connectivity in different countries for whatever they do for themselves or offer their customers. It cannot be offered by a single MNO, as big as it may be. And there we need the orchestration and the abstraction of the other MNOs, and we should expect the connectivity management solutions to be able to do that. That goes to the global connectivity orchestration as well. I'm an MNO, and I'm expected to provide a global connectivity solution that also includes the other MNOs' capabilities, not only through, I call it naive or basic roaming agreements, but more than that, to be able to truly use locally the other MNO's assets. And to manage the connectivity in that sense also means that we do not only manage our own solution in our own footprint and with some roaming capabilities, but we really make sure that the solution we provide to our customers is consistent globally. This is, in my view, a managed connectivity solution on a global scale. And this is how we see the benefit of the future connectivity solution. So if I'm summarizing these two slides, the expectation should be as follows. Number one, Mr. Provider of connectivity management platforms, please make sure that you come in with a holistic solution, meaning it should include the basic stuff, it should include the AI stuff, it should include the core network stuff, it should include the eSIM stuff. This is basically becoming the basic package we should expect. This is one. And then don't stop there. Take it and make it globally available and globally consistent from a performance and control perspectives with the thing that are appearing on this slide. So this is what I think the future of the connectivity management platform is about. And if you go to the next slide, we can take maybe a quick look on what I said at the beginning of this call. Our vision is built, upon these two elements. One is a global connectivity, a holistic connectivity management platform that includes all these elements, including the core network in the cloud. And second is the global network that comes with it that allows the MNOs to avoid putting a capital investment in building a global network, but be able to use a global network upon need or per use with all these models. And then if you go to the next slide, please, and we talk about the challenges that this concept addresses or address. We talk about three main things that we see more and more in the market. We spoke about the profitability of the MNOs and their ability to get the solutions down to the market in the right way. We speak about the global needs that are coming in, and we speak about the fact that we see MNOs coming and looking on serving different types of use cases and being very agile from a business model perspective. And also Matt was talking about it before. Are we going to see CMPs that are going to address more specifically low power devices versus high throughput devices? Are we going to see CMP that are going to be stronger on local footprint versus global needs, etc.? So the point is that we need to look on all these needs, and in order to make it simple for the MNOs, be able to provide a solution that can address all these different needs at the same time. Let's dive a little bit more deeply into it. If you go to the next slide and talk about profitability, talking about €1 per year, and you take everything that we've just discussed, I will just say the following. The challenge of the connectivity management platform providers like floLIVE and the other players in the market should be the following. We need to make sure that the MNOs are profitable when they provide their solutions to their customers, and they can compete with these trends we see in the market, €1 per year, and all that stuff. And at the same time, we need to make sure that the solution that they use is not only profitable and cost effective, and the marginal unit cost of the 1 million and one device can be operated in a cost effective manner. This is not enough. It needs to include all the elements we spoke about before, the core networks, the eSIM subscriptions capabilities, the basic stuff, the AI analytics, the global coverage and reach, and at the same time, be competitive in the market. And we believe that the only way to do it is by, first of all, providing an end-to-end stack, so we don't need to pay for vendors for different components of the solution, like the core network vendors or the billing vendors. And second, which is the most important thing, to use the power of the latest and greatest technologies in the market. The cloud native stuff, the scale up, scale down in an automatic way. All these things that are being used for other industries like the hyperscalers to deliver compute and memory in a cost-effective way. We need to apply these things on the telecommunication market. We need to think on how we transform this market to be global and feature-rich, but at the same time, very, very, very cost-effective. And that can be done by using the modern technologies. That leads me to the second point. If you go to the next slide, we cannot just think about the local footprint. More and more companies are going beyond the local footprint to deliver solutions to their customers. So if I'm an MNO and I'm really strong in my footprint and I'm okay in other territories, and I don't have such a great solution in countries like Brazil and Turkey, I may have a problem because I may be losing business to the competition in the market. So not only we need a solution to include all the things we spoke about before, the core network and the eSIM and the AI and all that, it also needs to be global with all the benefits that we think about as a global solution, like flattening the latencies, like being able to deliver solutions in a local country with local IP addresses, in all these locations with a true single pane of glass, with consistent service grade in Germany and the US and China and Brazil and Botswana and Switzerland, and centrally controlled steering globally, and the ability to use eSIM and UICC anywhere in the world in the same way. We need that solution to be simple to use for the MNOs also, or for the enterprises also globally, and not only in the MNOs footprint. And the last element, as mentioned before, is to really be able to, if we go to the next slide, is to really be able to deliver, to be ready for the flexibilities that the future will demand from the MNOs. Meaning, if we go to low power versus high power devices, multi-tier and multi-tenant, multi-carrier and flexible billing, advanced analytics and control. We cannot think about the existing needs and build a solution towards that. This slide comes to say we've seen tremendous changes in the IoT industry in the last 3, 4, 5 years, and we have no reason to believe it will not continue. The solutions we provide should not only be feature-rich with their cores and eSIM and analytics and AI, should not only be global by nature, providing global consistent performance in the wide context of performance, I would say, for our customers, but it should also be agile and flexible to address the future evolving business needs that will come down the stream, even if you don't see them today. And the way to do it is truly to go for that. If we go to the no, the next slide is yours, is to truly go to the solution that is modern on one hand and global and holistic on the other hand. And that's basically the way that we see the future of CMPs. Back to you, Matt.
Fantastic, thanks, Nir. Yes, indeed, next one is my one. But this is something that we talk about during the in the report in quite a lot of detail. I don't want to dwell too much on this, so we got time for questions. But what we've done is a segmentation of this CMP space. The most important thing to look at is over on the left-hand side, this thin CMP versus thick CMP. So as mentioned, there's a lot of connectivity management platforms that fulfill the fundamental functions that are required as a baseline of a CMP, so SIM management and analytics, of which there are dozens of companies. But that thick connectivity management platform, that's a richer set of functionality, including all those things that we've talked about: the connectivity network, the core network infrastructure, the analytics, eSIM and RSP, and various other functions. Now, the interesting one, which we'll debate long into the night, I'm sure, is the extent to which those CMPs, the thick CMPs, can actually get into the provision of managed connectivity. It's something that, say, Cisco and Ericsson have kind of dabbled with in the past, but being told to stop by their providers, by their operator partners rather. Now maybe the market's moved on, and there are a number of companies which span CMP and MVNO, provide connectivity as well as running a CMP. So maybe the space has moved on. If you want to jump in more on all of the various different categories that we talk about here, then I'll leave you to download a copy of the report to take a look. But let me skip on quickly and run very fast through a set of conclusions and recommendations. First one: never been a better time to look at options for CMPs. There's a lot of options available out there nowadays. Focus on customer needs. So consideration of choice in CMP always needs to include the enterprise perspective. So what functionality does a network operator need, and how are they going to want to use it? So that might be about ease of API integration, or it might be performance or latency or device to cloud capabilities, or any number of things. But the key thing to remember is what the enterprise requirements are. Definition of CMP needs to be wider. I've talked about this quite a lot already. The lines between CMP and other aspects of IoT connectivity have definitely blurred. If all you want is basic connectivity management platform, there's lots and lots of options. I talked about this earlier. Many companies providing that, but there is quite a wide variation when it comes to the value-added services. Selection of CMPs should include consideration of those other technical and operational issues, the things like cost and time to market, SLA, security, compliance. There's an incredibly long list, and they vary significantly by CMP, and the requirements will vary a lot depending on who the operator is. Cisco and Ericsson continue to dominate. They're the big players. They're the ones to take pot shots at, but they'll certainly be around in the space. They're certainly not disappearing, but changing and adapting a little. Consider your different customer segments and whether they need different approaches. This bifurcation question: low power wide area connectivity versus the high end 4G and 5G connectivity, and they might need to be addressed differently. And decision by MVNOs and MNOs and MVNOs about CMP strategy is going to be highly specific to their circumstances. If you want to have a chat with me about it, more than willing to have a conversation. This is something we've dug into a lot. Over to you, Nir, for I think just about the last slide. This may be more or less what you were talking about earlier, but if you want to finish off.
Yeah, I would just say that that we truly believe that the three things we spoke about before, being holistic and modern solution that can really make it more sensible from a commercial perspective for the MNOs. The fact that it should be also looking on a global scale, and the fact that it can be agile enough to address evolving needs. So, for example, adding satellite coverage as part of it, adding or combining private networks and public networks as part of the solution. All these capabilities coming in that can be easily added if you have a modern technology stack. This is how we see the way forward.
Absolutely. And just to finish off, I won't dwell on this. We've got a bunch of other transition topics that we talk about. Connectivity management platform is just one. There's a press release. Recommend you take a look at that. And one final note, you can get access to a lot of our free content via the Essentials subscription. You just need to hop onto our website. That's the site. Sign in. You get access to a whole range of content. But what I really want to get onto is the Q&A. Let me find the questions that we've got. So as mentioned, we had a set that were posed for us by you out there as you registered, and there have been a few smattering of others that have come in as we've been conducting the webinar. So first one, and I promise this isn't a setup, Nir. So the first question was, what's unique about the floLIVE solution versus other multi-carrier SIM solutions? It sounds like a planted question, doesn't it? But I promise it wasn't.
So I think we touched this one before, but I would say the completeness and the fact that we are looking to really address the variety, the various needs of the MNOs. Meaning, first of all, being a complete solution end to end, which includes the eSIM subscription, the core network, the advanced real-time billing, and all these capabilities as a platform on one hand, but also the global coverage, bringing as part of the solution other MNOs coverage, the global network, allowing MNOs to use their own roaming IMSIs for global needs. So this is basically part of what we do. And if we dive into the specific things, the economics of the platform, and we talk about the subscription or the eSIM capabilities, the ability to use EUICC with multi-IMSI solution within that, and the fact that we can operate the core network over cloud, which allows basically MNOs to use multiple cores if needed for different needs on a global scale, and still keep the cost of operation the same. So the completeness, the modernity, and the globality of the solution is basically what's unique about floLIVE.
Okay, good stuff. One for both of us next, I think, and this is one we've had quite a few people asking questions about this. Not surprising, really. Key implications of the arrival of the new GSMA IoT RSP standard for CMP providers. As an aside, I was at Mobile World Congress in February and spoke to obviously a lot of carriers, and almost all of them were saying, what's everybody doing about SGB 3132 versus SGP2, the old M2M variant of the remote SIM provisioning? And the answer was, well, they're all asking the same question that you are. So, and indeed the same question that the person's asking. So Nir, you got some perspectives on that? This IoT remote SIM provisioning variant?
I think it's good news for the industry overall, because I think it's going to standardize the way that we're going to consume the eSIM capabilities. It's going to be basically part of the CMPs down the stream, and makes the technologies to be used much more widely and easily by the MNOs, because basically we have these two trains that we're running in parallel, the consumer and the M2M trains running in parallel, that are going to converge, and one thing that is built for one is going to be good for the other. So this is one, and the second thing that is going to be easier to embed these within the connectivity management solution. So the way to look at it is to expect the CMP providers to get that as part of the standard capabilities down the stream. and to have that completely integrated and baked into the other connectivity management capabilities, and not to think about two different solutions, eSIM subscription and connectivity management platform. Basically, should be a single connectivity management solution that includes the eSIM capabilities, and within that to even think about variations like multi-IMSI where needed versus EUICC profiles, etc. That should all be under the same hood, under the same solution that the MNOs should expect.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what's notable is that the SGP2, the M2M variant, everybody sees as being very very clunky, shall we say, and there's, I think, a lot of hope that actually the SGP 3132 is the IoT variant is going to be much more useful for end customers first and foremost, but also it feels like it does it more democratizes. It's an easier role to play, that the EIM role, than the old SMSR SMDP kind of a role that really was a specialist function for the subscription management platform, the SIM vendors essentially. And I think it democratizes it a lot, and means that a lot of more players will be able to provide that functionality. So I see it very positive from both sides. Next question. What are possible ways that AI will be used for anomaly detection with connectivity? What data will be required? You have some perspectives on that?
Yeah, so first of all, I would say that, like any AI machine, data is, of course, the raw material from which insights are being made. And we think, and we are working on different ways to use AI to improve the connectivity management platform capabilities. You can think about it, and you mentioned some of it, Matt, yourself before. You can think about it either in the area of optimizing your cost, with different ways of optimizing cost when using coverage and connectivity, or other services coming on top. Or you can think about it as a mean for optimizing the connection. This is another area. The third area could be using it to optimize security or performance. All these things that today are being made with different tools within the CMP are going to use AI to get better and better. So cost, coverage, performance, security. The one point to remember, though, is that we will need all the data possible and available to make the AI efficient in this respect. We will need the data in real time from our core networks, all the available data coming from the core and radio access to that extent, and all the data coming from the billing systems, the management systems. This is another source of data that we need to combine together, and also potentially also from the data layer, the data behavior layer, that should be coming as well as part of the conversation. And again, that goes back to the need to have a holistic solution that owns all the components. When you have all the components in, you can retrieve all the data from all the different parts of the platform. You can put them in one lake, and then you can put AI on top of it to optimize cost, coverage, performance, security.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I draw an analogy with some work that we did on security recently, where we looked at the various different elements of in the security stack, the device versus the network versus the transport layer, application, and so on. Now, each individually has a set of security that will be applied to them, but actually you get into much better anomaly detection and fault resolution if you start thinking of all those pieces together. If you're considering, okay, the device behavior in the context of what networks it's connecting to, in the context of how it's sending data, and what the application is doing. And the same sort of thing applies here. You get a lot more functionality and capability from combining all of those various elements. And I think of things like churn reduction and root cause analysis for any problems. That kind of thing, I think AI will be very useful for. Right, moving swiftly on. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but We see the trends for CMP providers offering lean CMP services. Are some providers also going the other way, i.e. up the value-added stack, offering more premium or even application services? So this is more or less the thin versus thick approach that we've discussed in quite some detail. So yes, a lot of CMP providers are adding a very rich set of additional functionality on top. I don't know whether you've got anything additionally you want to add onto that one, Nir.
The only thing that I would mention very shortly is that the needs for IoT are becoming, more diversified. So there are more use cases, there are more needs, there are more things that customers would like to do with it, and we need to think not about the amount of capabilities we have today, but which solutions can really be easy to add more and more functionalities down the stream when we will need to be agile by nature, to be able to be thick in the future as much as we needed to address more use cases.
Yeah, very good. Right, I'm going to try to get just a few more very quickly. There's a question about how businesses monitor and track availability of systems in terms of active and inactive payment devices. So I think what they're talking about here is devices that might be online sometimes, might be offline other times, to sort of activate and deactivate, and how you deal with those kind of occasionally connected devices. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, there are more and more use cases about devices that wake up twice, 3 times a day to retrieve and submit and send data to the network and go back to sleep in a way. It's a little bit more sensitive use case from a connectivity perspective, because you need the devices to wake up every time and register to the network in the right way, and do it enough to be able to send the information with the right level of latencies, so the devices will have enough time in a way to interact with the network and not lose time on long distance registrations. And obviously you need to take care of how do you treat the device when it's not active. So yes, this is something that is becoming more often, and there is in a way a set of let's call it subsystem with the modern connectivity management platform that deal with these specific use cases from all these aspects, from the commercial aspects of it, the performance aspects of it, the registration and connection aspects of it. So yes, definitely see it coming in, and we need to address all these things to make the use case effective for the customers.
Okay, and we're pretty much at time, but I'm going to just one more question, and it's an interesting one around: are there no code solutions to develop IoT projects with unspecialized teams?
Well, I think that generally to make a proper solution, you need to have some level of specialization. I don't think that not someone that doesn't know anything about devices and networks and anything can bake it together in a proper way. But it should be only natural to assume that solution, that all the capabilities we discussed today, everything, including the deep network control capabilities, the deep eSIM capabilities, the deep AI algorithms, all these things should be controlled via a set of APIs, and maybe ready-made pieces of code that allows customers to shorten the time to develop applications that also control the connectivity and networking layer centrally. So this is what should be done, and we very much believe in it. In a way, we need to think about the API first and then about the function, and not the vice versa.
Yeah, very, very good. We're at time. Nir, thank you very much. Well, I should say thank you to all the attendees, everybody who's joined us. Some interesting questions as well. But thank you, Nir. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Matt, for hosting me. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So goodbye to everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye.